It's been a quiet winter meetings for the Mariners, but yesterday they made some noise by defying the odds in the draft lottery. Plus, Roki Sasaki is a priority for the Mariners this winter, and that comes straight from Jerry DiPoto himself. We'll talk about all that coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Wednesday, December 11th, 2024. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And even though they didn't make a move, it was a big day for the Mariners yesterday. We'll talk about their ridiculous jump in the draft lottery, as well as Jerry DiPoto outright saying that Roki Sasaki is a priority for the team this winter. But before we get into all that, shout out to our title sponsor today, FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. All you have to do is click the link in the description of this episode. So, yesterday, I decided to watch the MLB Draft lottery. Even though the Mariners were, expected to probably just land where they were projected to. At 15, they had the just a 0.5% chance of landing the first overall pick. But hey, last year, the Guardians had a 2% chance to land the first overall pick, and they got it. And then the Reds had a 0.8% chance, and they got the second pick. So
both of those odds higher than 0.5.
Certainly. But hey, you never know. And what else am I going to do with my time on a random Tuesday night?
I would have watched it, but no, I'm not paying for an MLB Network subscription. And
it was free on MLB.com.
I couldn't find the link. They hit it very well.
It was literally on the front page.
I was literally there, and they didn't show it. I was literally on
right
there.
Well,
and I was like,
you
guys
didn't
aren't
look
even
hard enough.
Simulcasting this on MLB.com or YouTube or nothing? No? Okay.
Yeah.
I refuse to pay for MLB Network, though. It is trash. Anyways.
Yeah. That's Colby's little soapbox moment here. So
like there's only going to be one.
Yeah, no, there's going to be plenty more, as I'm sure all of you are well aware and fully expecting heading into every episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast. Now, so on the off chance that, hey, maybe the Mariners make a run, I'm going to watch this thing. And sure enough, they made the jump into the top 6.
Wrong.
All right. That's interesting.
But you're so wrong.
I mean, yeah, they didn't get the first overall pick, but whatever.
Good consolation prize, though.
Yeah, pretty nice. So we get into the top 6, and then I'm like, all right, well, maybe they just got the 6th pick, which is still great. Yeah, still a lot better than 15. But number 6 gets called, not the Mariners. Number 5 gets called, not the Mariners. Number 4 gets called. It's the Rockies, who had the highest odds of landing the first overall selection. What's happening? Well, finally the Mariners got called at number 3, which, like, at that point, you're kind of riding the high. A little bit of a bummer because it's like, oh my God, are they actually going to land the first overall selection? But still, I mean, they got the 3rd overall selection in the 2025 MLB draft, which is insane for a multitude of reasons. One, means the Mariners are probably going to land a pretty damn good prospect next summer. 2, it adds even more bonus pool money that they weren't expecting, about $4-ish million, just judging from last year's slot values. Last year, 15th overall pick was $4.88 million, and the Mariners actually made that pick to taking Durangelo Senja. They gave him that slot value as well at 4.88. The number 3 pick last year, Charlie Condon, the Rockies, that slot value was $9.07 million. They ended up giving Condon 9.25. So about $4 million gained here by the Mariners, and it might be even more. We'll see what the slot values wind up being once we get to the draft. And that is also on top of the slot money that they added from getting the competitive balance round A selection they were awarded last week. So it's been a really good last 8 days for the Mariners regarding the 2025 draft. So there are a lot of ways that we can attack this, Colby. First and foremost, just getting the number 3 pick. What's your reaction? And obviously we got a whole season of amateur ball to still be played. I mean, like you and I were talking about off air, Charlie Condon wasn't on anyone's radars, at this time last year before he went on to hit 40 bombs or whatever it was. And they ended up being the 3rd pick. So we don't know. There might be someone that rises the ranks and lands on the Mariners radar. Who knows? But who are you keeping your eye on right now?
Yes. First and foremost, congratulations to Scott Hunter. Who's done a phenomenal job. Him and his team running the Mariners draft and has done a fantastic job, not only, picking good players, good prospects with these picks in the middle, usually in the middle or late in the first rounds. Not only has he done that really well, he's also picked guys that the player development staff can work with and that they have strength and they can help actually get to the big league. So it's a really good marriage between Scott Hunter and his staff and the player development folks. And it's produced some really good results over the last few years. And now he doesn't have to pick 15. He doesn't have to pick 22. He doesn't have to wait until, pick 30, right? He gets the 3rd pick, which there is a high probability that he will get to pick, the best player on his board, like the number 1 overall player on his board, even though they don't have the number 1 overall pick. So congrats to Scott Hunter. It'll be interesting to see, how they approach this, particularly if they keep the 35th pick, which they can trade. And it does make some sense to trade, but if they don't end up trading it, that could add a lot of intrigue both at 3 and at that later pick because of the bonus they now have.
Because you might be able to bring down whoever is the top player on the board, whether that's, Ethan Holiday or Jace LaViolette or whoever, right? Again, we got a full season of amateur ball to still be played here before we get to the draft. So things can significantly change. But having that competitive balance around A selection gives the Mariners a lot of options here, both with regards to the draft and also on the trade market, like you said. So do you think that landing this pick, adding the extra bonus pool money that you weren't expecting to add, makes it more likely that they trade that competitive balance pick, which they have traded that pick before, or they have traded competitive balance picks in the past?
Never around A selection, but this is only the 2nd time they've ever had one. I don't know. Like, I would probably be more likely to aggressively shop that pick, but I don't know if the Mariners are more likely. I don't think they're less likely as a result of the draft lottery yesterday, but I don't think they're more likely. I think it's probably still about the same proposition. One thing they could also do is they could also go under slot a little bit at pick 3 and kind of maybe push somebody who's supposed to go in the middle of the first down to them at pick 35. And they can maybe get, instead of getting like a top 5 player and a top 40 player, maybe instead they get like a top 12 player and a top 15 player. Right. Like they can do something like that. So there are a lot of options here. Now, again, I am typically like, wait till May, June before I dive really deep into like the draft. Because again, prospects change, guys get hurt, guys declare that they're going to go to school and a lot changes. Guys have good years. They have bad years. New pitches get developed. All that stuff is happening right now. So it doesn't make a lot of sense for me, to spend a lot of time on that. So usually it's not till May where I really start to dive in and start to formulate opinions on guys, but just based on what I've read from other people and based on the very limited things I have seen from this draft class, it's pretty good, especially at the top. And obviously most years, if you have a top 5 pick, it doesn't really matter what the quality of the draft is, you're getting a good prospect. But this year, it's pretty good in the top 10. And so the Mariners are almost certainly going to get top 50 prospect in all of baseball is going to get added to this farm system in July.
Yeah. So you got a couple of names that you're keeping an eye on here in the early going.
Sure.
Because again, everyone's on the table now, which is fascinating, which is something that we haven't really in our time doing this together. That hasn't been the case.
No,
the closest we got was 2020 when they took Emerson Hancock at 6.
Right. And that's still, that's big difference.
Yeah.
Like think about it. Any player, amateur player, right, who is draft eligible in 2025 in the entire, well, not the world because it's not a world draft, but you know what I mean. They could be a Mariner in 7 months. Like that's legit. Even the guy you think definitely won't be there, he could be. That's what the number 3 pick gives you, as well as the extra bonus money from the 35th pick. But whatever. So yeah, a couple guys early on that I really like. A couple of Pacific Northwest guys actually jumped up really quick to me. Xavier Nyans is a third base prospect who goes to Mount Vernon High School. Well, he goes to high school in Mount Vernon. I don't know if it's Mount Vernon High, but Washington guy, left-handed bat, 6'4", already about 200 pounds. So there's some room here to add strength and add good weight. Pretty good athlete, plus raw power, maybe 70 grade raw power, and a pretty good feel to hit. Like it's a good lefty swing. The power is kind of, blossomed late here as he's made a little bit of a swing adjustment. But there's a shot here that this guy hits, this guy could hit 280 with 35 bombs, and sounds like he's got a real good shot to stay at third base. So, and if he's not going to stay at third base, he's going to be just fine in right field again. Good athlete, still projectable, strength gain there. Oregon State commit. But yeah, if you're in the Mount Vernon area, you might want to go watch this kid because he might be the Mariners' third baseman of the future here as early as July. So he's the guy that jumped out right away. Ava Arquette is another guy who jumped out right away. He played at UW last year and he absolutely destroyed. Unfortunately, he didn't quite have the supporting cast around him to help all that much. So he transferred into Oregon State. He'll be playing in Oregon State this year. But he is just a hitter. Like he is a pure hitter. Maybe, he might end up being, when the time comes, the best college bat in college ball. So he's about 6'4". He's about 215 to 220, but he's still a really good athlete. He's still agile. He's the second baseman by trade. He can play shortstop. He proved that this summer. He can play short. He can play second. He can play third. So lots of opportunities. He can stay up the middle. He might have to move to third, but it's probably a 60 hit tool with 55 raw power or 55 game power, more raw power in there. Again, 6'4", 220, well built, strong arm, really good player. Just a high floor guy, pretty high ceiling too. There's all-star games in Arquette's future. And he's probably a pretty quick mover to the big leagues as well. So those two guys really stood out. And then from the pitching side of things, Jamie Arnold, I noticed, was a very popular mock draft selection for the Mariners in some of the mocks that dropped yesterday. I'm actually more of a Tyler Bremner guy from UC Santa Barbara. But obviously, he is, a good bet to go in the top 5. So he might not be there, but already gets tremendous fastball value, pretty good breaking ball, plus changeup, and throws a ton of strikes. So Bremner is a guy, 6'2", 190. There's still some projectability left. Throws a ton of strikes, already gets plus fastball value, already has a plus off speed pitch, and a pretty good breaking ball. That is actually his third pitch right now. So those 3 guys, you got a couple college guys who are probably going to move pretty fast into the system. One of them's an infielder, one of them's a pitcher. And then from the prep ranks, Xavier Nyans from Mount Vernon, huge raw power, like maybe the most raw power in the entire class. Left-handed bat, local kid, going to make a lot of sense. So it's those are just 3 guys, and those aren't even the consensus top 3 on most people. Like those are, guys who are in the 5 to 8 range from what I've seen. So it's the Mariners are going to get a very good, very exciting prospect.
Oh yes. All right, so we are going to turn our attention to another young, very exciting player who's ready to make the jump to Major League Baseball. He was posted just the other day, and teams now have 45 days, or a little under that now, to see if they can land him. That's Roki Sasaki, and then the Mariners, they're apparently making him a priority this winter, and that comes directly from Jerry DiPoto's mouth. So we'll talk about that in just a moment, but first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. So Roki Sasaki was officially posted. He is up for grabs now, even though his agent Joel Wolf said that he is not going to sign until sometime after January 15th, which is when the new international signing period begins in Major League Baseball. But teams are now allowed to start communicating with him officially. And this winter meetings, we've heard a lot of teams, the Mariners included, just outright express their interest in Sasaki, which is, not typical. You typically don't hear clubs outright say like, yeah, we're interested in this guy specifically. We think this highly of this guy, what have you. But because this is more of an even playing field, because he is an international free agent, he's only subject to bonus pool money and not, a regular free agent contract like Yoshinobu Yamamoto or Seiya Suzuki or whoever, right? Teams are probably more willing to just say, yeah, we like this guy, we're going to go after this guy, because every team should be going after this guy. It's kind of like a no dust situation, right? So we've heard Brian Cashman today say how much the Yankees like Roki. We heard Freeman from the Dodgers yesterday say that they think he can be the best pitcher in the world. And even the Mariners, Jerry Dipoto in his media appearance a couple days ago with like Adam Jude and Daniel Kramer and all those guys, said that the Mariners are going to be very aggressive in pursuing Roki Sasaki. They have a presentation plan for him. They feel good about their chances, which is something that we had heard over the last couple of weeks, that they were planning to pitch to him and that they feel confident in their abilities to land him. And Dipoto went as far as to say that, getting to the second round, the third round of negotiations with Sasaki is a priority for the Mariners. So let's attack it from there, because we also have a lot of stuff from Sasaki's agent yesterday in his media appearance that we can get into, that some of the things that he said confirms a report that was out there a few weeks ago. The Mariners officially announcing they're going after Sasaki. They really like him. What do you think about that?
Just like the Mariners, like being like this vocal about, how much they like Sasaki. That's unusual. The Mariners are very tight-lipped, although recently not as much, but traditionally they're very tight-lipped about how they view players and all that stuff. But, again, this is kind of a special circumstance. The last time I remember them talking this openly about wanting a player like this desperately was Shohei Ohtani.
And he was also an international free agent.
Yes, and he was also a special circumstance. So,
yeah,
to me, it's noteworthy at least that the Mariners are like publicly, I don't know, lauding a player. Because that's not something they do ever. Like, it's very rare that they'll do that. So the fact that they do that, do I think that means that they think that they have a really good shot or no shot or anything? No, I don't think that's what's happening here. It's just interesting to me that they're being that open about it. Because again, traditionally they're not about players, but it is interesting. And we talked about this before, all seriousness aside, even when, I gave the Roki thing like about as much chance as the Mariners getting the number 1 overall pick, almost. So,
sure.
If it was truly a level playing field, the Mariners have a phenomenal case to make to Roki Sasaki.
Yes.
From the ballpark, from the city, from the history with Japanese players, from the pitching development, from the ability to win right away, the ability to run a 6-man rotation without really skipping a beat. Also, you look at like some of the metrics on Sasaki's pitches, fastball, very similar. The splitter, very similar to Logan Gilbert's splitter. You look at the one thing Sasaki's kind of struggling with right now, fastball shape. He throws it hard, but not great shape. Guess what the Mariners are really good at? Teaching fastball shape, getting fastball value out of guys. Look at Bryce Miller. Look at Brian Wu. And it's not like Sasaki has no fastball value. It's just he could get a little more out of it. And the Mariners are very good at that. So the Mariners also have a great history of developing young guys and keeping their young guys off the IL. Like they're very, very good at a lot of the things that would make a ton of sense for any pitcher, particularly one like Sasaki. It makes a lot of sense. Like the Mariners in a truly level playing field, just like who has the best case. The Mariners are in the top 3 or 4 to have just the best case, the best pitch. They don't quite have the best pitch though, because there's 3 things they can't say. They can't say we just won the World Series. They can't say we have Shohei Ohtani. They can't say we have Yamamoto. Mm-hmm. And one team can say all 3 of those things. So that's a tough pitch to beat. But again, like when you look at just like, if you eliminate those things, which you can't, but let's just do it, put it on the side. The Mariners have a much better case to pitch to Roki Sasaki than the Dodgers, than the Padres, because the track record is there. The history is there. The specific thing that the young Roki Sasaki, who's never thrown over 120 innings, talk about bringing guys along, avoiding injuries, pitcher development, all that stuff. Great ballpark to pitch in, great division to pitch in, a real shot in the wide open American League to maybe pitch in the playoffs, and all of this thing, and pitching in a great pitching staff with, by the way, the best defensive catcher in baseball, catching your starts. Like all of it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
They have a heck of a case if Sasaki's actually open to hearing from all these other teams, and he hasn't already picked a team, which seems to be the general consensus, is that he's already picked the Dodgers or the Padres. But again, if you ignore that, and you just look at each team and the case they could actually put before Roki Sasaki, the Mariners would be a favorite if you could ignore all the predetermined stuff that's already out there.
Yeah, so the Mariners are they're pulling out all the stops for this. Ichiro is going to be part of the pitch. That's been confirmed, as you would expect. But yeah, Jerry outright acknowledged what you're talking about, though. Like, we don't have the trophies, obviously, but what we do have is 4 homegrown dudes here that are all mid-rotation or better quality pitchers who are here for multiple years to come. Look what we've done with these guys. Look what we can do for you, right? Look at the ballpark you'll be pitching in, right? Mm-hmm. If you want to be the best pitcher in the world, we can make that happen for you. Yep. And the other thing too here is, again, Roki Sasaki, like every other pitcher that comes over from Japan, is not used to the kind of workload that Major League Baseball demands. He's not used to pitching once every 5 days. Now, other teams are very much well positioned to run a 6-man rotation. The Mariners are best positioned to roll out a 6-man rotation, though. They already have, from a 1 through 5 standpoint, the best rotation in baseball, right? When you're talking about strictly just depth of talent, 1 through 5, no rotation can match the Seattle Mariners right now. Even with the Dodgers adding Blake Snell, because there's still the question of like, who's their number 5 and all that, right? So you got Luis Castillo, George Kirby, Logan Gilbert, Bryce Miller, Brian Wu, and Roki Sasaki is essentially your 6. And you can help manage his innings that way and all that stuff. If that's something that appeals to him, the Mariners have the best argument of any team to make in that regard. Mm-hmm. So now let's get into what his agent, Joel Wolf, had to say yesterday. He had a big media gathering, tons of reporters all around him yesterday at the winter meetings. This is the most interesting quote to come from that. Quote, "I think that there's an argument to be made that a smaller mid-market team might be more beneficial for him as a soft landing." So that is the first thing we've really heard that corroborates that report a few weeks ago from Jim Allen, the reporter out of Japan, who said the same thing. Because again, we've been assuming like, oh, he wants to go to the Dodgers. It's obviously a slam dunk. Ohtani's there. Yamamoto's there. It's LA. Why wouldn't he want to go to LA? But that Jim Allen article said, no, pump the brakes. It's not a slam dunk he goes to LA. In fact, I don't even think it's that likely because Sasaki feels he was mistreated in the media. He doesn't want to go to a high pressure situation, all that. Well, his agent basically just confirmed that. So if that's true, and the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Mets, etc., they're kind of playing at a disadvantage because of market size. And I mean, if he feels like he was mistreated by the Japanese media, he probably definitely doesn't want to go to New York or Philadelphia. But that's a whole another thing. But if that's true, then yeah, it seems like it's anyone's ball game at that point. And if it is, then like we've talked about, the Mariners have as good of a pitch, if not better, than anyone else in the league to make to Roki Sasaki because of what they've done with their pitching, with their homegrown pitchers, and the ballpark they play in, and what they can offer him in terms of a 6-man rotation and all that. And by the way, that's something that I think fans have to prepare themselves for. If they do land Sasaki, is I think the likely outcome here is they're going to roll with a 6-man rotation in 2025. Mm-hmm. I don't think that suddenly means, oh, they're trading one of the pitchers.
No, I think they still could, but at that point, I think they then bring in another veteran to be the 6th guy in this rotation. So like, I really do think that they land Sasaki, they will run with a 6-man rotation. Will it be with the same 5 plus Sasaki as last year? Probably. Not 100%, but probably. But it certainly doesn't mean they're like, oh, Luis Castillo's gone now. Nope. I don't really. I think the odds improve a little bit that they might trade one of the 5 guys they have right now. But it's not a whole lot. I really don't think so. Especially if part of your pitch to Sasaki is that like, yeah, we're going to run a 6-man rotation with you. Mm-hmm. And again, we'll see if that matters to Sasaki or not. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he just wants to jump right in and try and work through it.
Well, if he wants a soft landing, right, and that doesn't just have to apply to the media market,
right?
Then there's no better soft landing than being the 6th guy behind, again, Luis Castillo, George Kirby, Logan Gilbert, Bryce Miller, and Brian Wu.
Yeah. So,
like, we're talking about one of the most talented rotation, and I mean, this was true even without Sasaki, but you add Sasaki to the mix. We're talking about one of the most talented rotations ever.
Mm-hmm. And you're talking about giving that super talented rotation an extra day off between every start. Go look at the numbers.
Which the Mariners have also talked about on multiple occasions over the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. So
I think if the Mariners had like another legitimate number 4 starter, they would be considering doing a 6-man rotation with or without Roki Sasaki. They don't. It's not Hancock, it's not Evans, it's not, and maybe they will in a year with Senja or something like that. But I do think the Mariners eventually will be a team that runs a 6-man rotation, and the game is trending that way anyways. It's just no team has really taken the leap to do that for an entire season. Like no team's done that yet. I think if the Mariners land Sasaki, they'll be the first team to run a 6-man rotation for a majority of the season. Maybe not all of it, because maybe you just want to shelve Sasaki for a couple of weeks. Or
injuries,
maybe,
obviously.
Yeah, injuries play a role. And then at that point, it's like, oh, Bryce Miller went on the IL for, a month with blisters or whatever. It's like, do we want to have Emerson Hancock and continue to take starts away from these other 4 guys just to keep the 6-man rotation? Or do we just want to go with a 5-man for the next month and then like slot him back in? Like, yeah. So I do think that the game is
it can also help shorten your bullpen a bit, and you're going to get guys deeper into games, and maybe that takes some pressure off of having to add significant talent to your bullpen, all that as well.
Right. I mean,
you still do, but
sure. But I mean, also, by the way, if you get to the playoffs with this rotation, think of the number of starters who are going to go into the bullpen in a shortened series, or
think about Roki Sasaki pitching out of the bullpen.
Yeah, or Brian Wu, or like, think like, I don't know. It's like, oh man, they had to use Logan Gilbert in the last game of the year to win the division or whatever. It's like, what are they going to do? I don't know, start George Kirby, Roki Sasaki, Brian Wu, and put Bryce Miller and Luis Castillo in the bullpen for a 3-game series. Like, yeah, it would be absolutely filthy, assuming they can all stay healthy, which again, the Mariners track record on that, pretty good.
Yeah.
And that's a selling point. Oops. So yeah, again, my thing with Sasaki has never been like the Mariners don't have a good argument to make. They don't have a good sales pitch. They absolutely.
It's just the Dodgers exist.
The Dodgers exist, and they have Ohtani. They just won the World Series. They have Yamamoto.
Yeah.
They also
Yamamoto, who by the way has the same agent as Sasaki.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you really want like even a 5 or 10% chance the Mariners can get Sasaki, you really want that report about him not wanting to be in a big media market. You really want that to be the truth. Because if it's not, it's already over. And if it is true, I mean, I don't know what, like still 5 or 10% chance. Like, what would you put it? If you said right now, like he's not going to sign with the Angel or the Dodgers, the Yankees, or the Mets, like none of the big Chicago, none of the top 5 media markets. He's not going to sign with them. Plus San Francisco.
Then I think it's as close as 50-50
between them and the Padres.
Yeah. Now, like, there's probably some other teams that are involved that will be given a shot, that will get to give him an in-person pitch and all that stuff. Maybe like the Rangers or the Astros or the Brewers or the Cubs, whoever, right? But I think ultimately it comes down to the Mariners and the Padres at that point.
Right.
And the Padres have something that you can't offer, which is, one of the best. Well, that, but also one of the best Japanese pitchers of all time, Yu Darvish, being there as like a mentor and all that, right? Does that matter for Roki at all? Maybe it doesn't, but
yeah. Does the report? One of the things we did here is that Roki isn't concerned about whether or not there's another Japanese player on the team. Like that's not going to be a factor. But again, is that true, or is it the media market thing, or is it just posturing, or is it trying to get as many teams involved? So like if you're Roki's agent, you should be wanting to hear a pitch from all 30 teams.
Yep.
Absolutely. Even the White Sox. Like you should want to hear what the White Sox have to say, which should be a short meeting, but you should listen to them.
Maybe not.
You should.
Definitely not the Rockies.
No. But hey
Roki, you want to come pitch at Coors Field and play with some of the greats like Chris Bryant?
Like over. But yeah. So, we're at the end of the show here, but I just want to reiterate this because we've had some fun and all that with the Roki Sasaki thing. At the end of the day, do I think Roki Sasaki is likely to be a Seattle Mariner? 100% yes. It's already done.
Colby has switched his ways. Just wait until you hear what he's told me his next heel turn is going to be. That's like
there's a clue out there.
It's an M. Night Shyamalan level twist.
There is a clue out there already, though, by the way. If you know how to find it, that's the only hint you get. But.
So with that, we are officially on Roki Watch. So be sure to stick around here to Locked On Mariners over the next month or so, because we're going to be talking quite a bit about Roki Sasaki leading up to his decision sometime next month, which... Again, his agent said sometime after January 15th, he's going to make his decision. So nothing is imminent as of now. But thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Tidy Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Tidy Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.